Electric vehicles are everywhere, but is the EV revolution as green, affordable, and game-changing as they claim? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the top 5 reasons why the EV hype might be falling apart and what you need to know before buying one. Reason number 5, zero emissions. Is it really that green? First up, let's tackle the big one, zero emissions. Electric vehicles are marketed as the perfect way to cut down on pollution. But that's not the whole story. Sure, EVs don't have exhaust pipe spewing emissions, but what about the environmental impact of building them? The batteries that power EVs need rare earth elements like lithium, cobalt, and nickel materials that are incredibly resource-intensive to mine and refine. In fact, the production of these batteries results in a much larger carbon footprint compared to traditional combustion engines. Some studies show that it can take an EV up to 50,000 miles of driving just to offset the carbon footprint created during production. And that's assuming those miles are driven using renewable energy. The reality is, around 70% of the world's electricity still comes from fossil fuels like coal and natural gas, meaning we're just shifting the emissions from your tailpipe to power plants. So are EVs really that green? The answer isn't as simple as it seems. Reason number 4, EVs were supposed to be cheaper, but they're not. Remember when we were told that EVs would eventually become cheaper than gasoline cars thanks to high production numbers and government incentives? Well, that hasn't exactly happened. EVs are still significantly more expensive than their combustion engine counterparts, and those generous government incentives, they're shrinking fast. Governments worldwide hoped that if they pushed EV adoption hard enough, economies of scale would kick in, making it cheaper to produce EVs. But despite billions invested in massive incentives like tax credits and rebates, many car makers are still losing money on every EV they sell. And with middle-class buyers sticking to their gas-powered cars, that natural transition hasn't happened. Automakers expected sales to soar and costs to drop, but instead they're facing mounting expenses and lower sales figures than projected. With fewer buyers than anticipated, EV prices remain high, and governments are beginning to cut back on those incentives, making the dream of affordable EVs seem more distant than ever. Reason number 3, the technology war with China. EVs aren't just about going green. They're part of a global competition. China has invested heavily in EV production, dominating the industry with better infrastructure and control over key materials. Western automakers are struggling to keep up, and without high import tariffs, Chinese EVs could flood the market, leaving US and European brands in the dust. Reason number 2, oil dependence isn't going away anytime soon. EVs were supposed to reduce our reliance on oil, but the truth is oil dependence is still very real. The US might produce a lot of crude oil, but it still relies on refined oil from other countries. Global instability means higher oil prices, and EVs haven't yet proven to be the answer for energy independence. Reason number 1, running costs, more expensive than expected. Finally, let's talk about running costs. EVs were supposed to be cheaper to operate, but that's not always the case. Yes, charging your car at home can save you money compared to filling up a gas tank. Public charging stations are often pricier than filling up with gas, and inconsistent pricing is already frustrating drivers. Add to that rising electricity costs, and EV ownership is becoming more expensive than expected. What do you think? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more deep dives into the future of transportation.